Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Unlimited. Today, we are talking about how to manifest what you want. Now, manifestation is a fairly common concept at this point. You hear it all throughout the mainstream, though, especially in the more spiritual spaces, online entrepreneur spaces, coaching spaces, a lot of more feminine spaces. It's just very popular. And part of its popularity, actually the majority of its popularity in recent times, comes from some kind of problematic sources. So here's kind of the rundown of what we're going to be looking at and why. First off is because this month we're focused on visualization. And manifestation kind of emphasizes the reason why visualization is so important, but also why we need to go beyond that. So I wanted to make sure that we had some groundwork in what we're doing and why we're doing it before we started doing it. I just personally find that helpful so that we don't perpetuate problematic themes that we currently have in society. So that's something that we are going to be talking about today. So first of all, what is manifestation? The popular lies of manifestation and the pseudoscience behind our current most popular concepts of what manifestation is, how manifestation really works, like what is it actually, and how do we engage it, how to stop avoiding fear and use it, because one of the popular lies has to do with the emotional component and what's going on in the inner world and how it affects the outer world. And so how do we actually engage that in a real way? And where we go wrong with manifestation. Because oftentimes when we think about manifestation, it's very individualistic, and our society has an issue with over-individualizing. And so we're going to be looking at, like, what does that look like when we have pulled something that is as powerful as manifestation can be in an individual way and forget the societal context that it exists in. So how do we actually engage that context as well and engage the idea of manifestation in a way that supports not just ourselves and the values and goals that we have for us as individuals, but also the values that we hold as a society, as a community, and also how important that is in being able to manifest what you actually want. Because oftentimes, we get caught up in our own head and we only see what we know or what we're familiar with. And so it's really important to have group support and community support. Now, there are a variety of places that you can get that kind of support. And I've gotten it in a variety of places, from 12-step groups to spiritual groups, my friends meeting or Quaker meeting, from just friend groups, masterminds. There's so many different places where you can find a community that supports you. One of the things that I offer is group coaching, and a big part of that is because of the power of the community. I keep it an intimate community because I think that there is power in that and a supportiveness in that. Plus, because I do actual one-to-one coaching within the group, it allows me to actually do that. So that's important. But if you are looking for a community of a group space to do some of this work with in a more structured way and a supported way from a group of female people, then definitely check that out. It is linked in the show notes, and I am actively enrolling a new cohort, which consists of 6. So I'd love to chat. We do chat first to make sure it's a good fit, but check that out if that's of interest. And now, without further ado, let's get started. Hey there, I'm Valerie Friedlander, Certified Life Business Alignment Coach, and this is Unlimited. This podcast bridges the individual and the societal, scientific and spiritual, positive and negative, nerdy and no, there's just a lot of nerdy. Come on board and let's unlock a life that's as badass as you are. So, word nerd that I am, I wanted to first and foremost dig into the actual definition of manifestation, because So often we throw words around or we hear words around us and we're like, yeah, that sounds good. And then it's combined with like these kind of ideas about what it's supposed to be and do and how we do it. And there's not like a grounding and like what's actually going on here and why are we talking about that and why are we using that word in this context and how does it actually apply? And I don't know, I have all the questions. I don't know about you, but that's definitely something that runs through my mind of like, what are we actually saying when we use that word? I always hear Inigo Montoya going, you keep using that word. I don't think it means what you think it means. And too often I find that is the case, that it's like, well, it doesn't actually mean that. So I pulled up dictionary.com and looked up what do they have here for the term manifestation. What comes up here? And it says an act of manifesting, the state of being manifested. Then it says outward or perceptible indication. Materialization, and that kind of follows under spiritualism as well, a materialization. Also, a public demonstration as for political effect. The general idea here is that it is something that is created into reality, that exists in reality. So when you manifest something, you're taking something from an idea or from something that you have thought of and brought it into reality. And how do we bring things into reality? Well, we take action. We do something. Anyway, so I continued looking just to kind of see, all right, well, what else pops up here? And the Berkeley Wellbeing Institute had a definition that they put forward, which was manifestation is to create something or turn something from idea into reality. Also in psychology, it's using our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs to bring something into our physical reality. So here, thinking and imagining and believing is important. The mental component is important, but it isn't actually made manifest until it exists in external reality. So there are a variety of things that you can make manifest, make apparent, make in the world. And sometimes it's that something comes into your reality because you have thought of it. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. And it can be that you actually pour energy into making it true, making it exist. So the idea of manifestation that most people are familiar with at this point, that have been popularized in our current society, is from The Secret and The Law of Attraction books, which are actually based in pseudoscience and not based in the scientific method. So it ties into this idea of positive thinking and thinking and believing in something, and that will then create it, which is not true. There is a science that relates to why that may seem to be the case, but that is not in and of itself the case, and actually ties a fair amount to certain dynamics of privilege that can allow you to think about it and notice it, and then it exists and have that be accessible to you. But that sense of like, okay, believing in something does not actually create it. And I think that's really important to address, that in and of itself doesn't do anything. There is the act of creating it, the act of bringing it into the world. The side of this that is based in a scientific process that has been studied is the idea that believing you can do something, believing that something is possible, makes it more likely that, one, you will notice it in existence, that you will see it, that you will see options of how to achieve it, and more likely that you will actually do it. So it's not about actually just thinking it into existence, but being willing to put in the energy, put in the effort, the work, take the risks to actually take action and create it or achieve it. So it's not just the idea, it's an idea combined with action that manifests it in your life, that brings it forward, that makes it apparent because you can see it, or brings it forward in that you create it so that it is made manifest, right? Made into the reality, the space of existence outside of your own head. One of the tools of manifestation that a lot of coaches will use, or to support manifestation for a client, is tying to what is already familiar with you. So for example, if you want to manifest more money and the way that is apparent to you is to have a conversation with your boss about a raise or to raise your prices with a client or step into a new way of making money, a coach may say, when was the last time you did something similar to that? When was the last time you had a difficult conversation? What did you do? How did that go? And so tapping into what you've already done to give you some grounding in your ability to do something similar. So it may not be the exact thing, but it helps you notice that, oh, I have done this before. I could do this again. And pulling from something that is already familiar to you to help you take the step, take the action, take the risk to do it again in a different context. So the more familiar something is, the easier it is to believe. There are multiple ways that this can both be beneficial and detrimental. Beneficial such as in the way I just related, but also detrimental in that we tend to recreate things that we already have familiarity with, which means that we tend to create things that are also problematic in the world, not just beneficial in the world. So there is that, but more on that in a minute. All of this is rooted in our brains liking to be right, because being right and already knowing what will happen creates a sense of safety. It creates a sense of security. So that's where the whole idea of the self-fulfilling prophecy comes into play, is because we tend to confirm our own expectations. We like to be right. We want that security. So even if it's something we're expecting to not be right, and we don't actually want it to be right, we will find a way to confirm it because, again, it supports a sense of security, a sense of safety. The risk involved with creating something new, manifesting something new, can feel uncomfortable enough that we hold back from it. And especially if there's not a belief that it can be done or that it's possible, or a fear that there's some sort of risk that we can't see. And it really is often more than just the surface idea, the surface risk of like failure, for example, but more of the risk that we won't be able to get back up from failure, that no matter what happens, whether we succeed or fail, ultimately we will fail. And that lack of self-trust can sabotage anything that you're wanting to bring forward, because there's that fear that like, well, if I fail, then I won't get what I want, or that, like if this doesn't go the way I want, if I'm not able to achieve the thing, I won't pour all my energy into it, because then I won't have any energy to pick myself back up when it doesn't go well, or pick myself back up when it goes well and it's not actually what I wanted, right? Like all of those things, it's this lack of trust in your own ability to get back up, your own resiliency. So this self-fulfilling prophecy is that belief that it will go wrong, it will go badly. You'll see this in like when we feel bad, when we feel angry, when we're in a bad mood, we tend to interpret things as dangerous. And what does that mean? It means that someone is saying something that is attacking me. I take things personally, because if I take it personally, then I can fight it. Then I can protect myself from the threat of whatever they're saying about me that isn't very nice. Like I've used this example several times before. If I've had a rough day and my husband comes home from work and he is kind of grumping a little bit, I automatically am prone to thinking that, oh, that's about me. He's going to say something mean to me. Like there's already a guard up. And when there's a guard up, we kind of interpret, like our brains and bodies are constantly talking to each other. So all of this is happening in the subconscious where we're like prepared to fight. We're prepared to protect ourselves. So even if he's just like, ugh, dishes, I'm more likely to go, yeah, what's the problem? Yeah, there are dishes. So what? Like, why do you only notice the things that I don't do? So I'm already prepared. I've already believed that he's in a bad mood and that he's annoyed at me. Those sorts of things. So we tend to interpret these things in like a negative way, anything that might be dangerous, even when the thing itself is neutral, like, oh, dishes, like I've got something to do. There's these things there. It's not about me at all. It has nothing to do with me. This is along the lines, and you'll relate to this just in neutral circumstances, such as like, say you buy a particular car, like a black minivan, and suddenly you see that black minivan that you just bought everywhere. Suddenly it's like, oh my God, did everybody buy a minivan the same time I bought a minivan? Like suddenly they're all over the place. This happens with like, if you're thinking about having a baby, suddenly everyone else is pregnant. All of those things can play in to how we engage and what we engage, whether, we had a client reject an offer and then the next client comes up and you're like, I don't want to be hurt again. I don't want to have my offer rejected. So there's more resistance to fully engaging the conversation. And you don't necessarily think about that, but like there's part of your brain that is preparing to protect itself, to protect you from the pain of failure. Another example would be like what we see right now is people leaving corporate with the Great Resignation. And it can be one that people are actually going, hey, this isn't worth it. This doesn't work. This is a toxic environment. It's not, hey, this isn't worth it. It's a toxic environment. It's not healthy for me. I have other options. But it can also be, oh, I see other people leaving. And that means that it's possible for me. Maybe I could do this too and be okay because enough people are going. And this also ties to how a lot of times people will sell you on like the idea of, well, I did this, so you can too. If I can lose this weight and I was in this situation, you can too. And in a lot of ways, it is true to pull from, if you can help someone see that it's possible for them, they are more likely to do the work, to put in the effort, to take the risks involved to try and do the thing, to really play fully into the thing. It also gets triggered when you see other people closing their business and going back to corporate. And then it starts the questioning of, oh, maybe I can't do this. Maybe I should do that. Maybe I can't actually handle it. If they couldn't handle it and if they went back to corporate, then maybe I should. So that doubt can come into play when you see other people doing something that you have labeled failing. Now, that particular one, I see a lot where people are telling you to watch out for that and watch out for people who are going back to corporate. The problem is that they're not taking into consideration that it could have been a conscious choice. Entrepreneurship isn't for everyone. Solopreneurship is not a good fit for everyone. So it takes, when we do that whole like I did, so you can too, and those sorts of things, it's much more narrow, but there's a reason it's done, and that is because it helps you tap into what's possible. And if you want that, then it helps you overcome the fear and the risk. The important part of not buying into someone else's story, so this is one of those places where this can be problematic, is the important part of not buying into someone else's story as meaning, therefore, that you can too, and ignoring your own intuition about what actually fits for you, is first of all, knowing what you want. And not just in an outcome, like what you want to achieve out there, but what you want to experience life like. And this is the core of the visioning work that I do with clients, which is, who do you want to be in the moment, in the now? Who do you want to be? How do you want to experience life? And what impact do you want to have? Because when you know those things, that helps you determine aligned action to those things in the moment, outside of just the outcome and what you want later on. Because what you are manifesting, what you are making true in the world, is based in each action that you take, the things that you do. And you're doing things all the time, whether you're doing them consciously or doing them subconsciously, whatever actions that you're taking, you are constantly manifesting. You are constantly manifesting yourself in the world. You are constantly manifesting what you believe in the world, because all of those things influence the actions that you take, the things that you do, the things that you make in reality in the world. So knowing what you want in the now, how do you want to be, And then those fear blocks that come up, those places where you hold back, where you create resistance to things, is knowing that it's okay to be afraid. You're not manifesting fear. The fear is already there. Like, that already exists. It's already influencing you. It's already in a manifested way by how you behave. So whether you're thinking about it or whether you're avoiding it, it's still there. So rather than avoiding it and just trying to pretend it's not there and trying to just counter things, it's recognizing that it's okay that you're afraid. There are real reasons to be afraid. There are reasons why the fear is happening. Now, whether they are based in a truth or not is the question. But it's not good or bad to be afraid. It's a normal response, especially to new things that you don't know how they're going to play out and what's going to happen. You don't know if there's going to be pleasure or pain. And there's a desire to avoid pain. That's a basic instinctual thing, to avoid pain. But when you can look at it and go, well, what's actually going on here? Then you can engage it and make manifest courage. Then you're manifesting that courageousness by taking action to engage it. Because, honestly, the fears may even point to real cautions that you want to consider. Not everything is in your head. You're not making everything up. Not everything is mindset. I had a client recently who's been struggling with fatigue, and she's like, maybe I'm just avoiding things and wondering about that. And I'm like, well, maybe not. Have you looked into this? And she ended up talking to a nutritionist, and she actually is having some thyroid issues and some adrenal issues. So the fatigue was not in her head. It was real. Now, are there things that can be done to engage those things related to stress release and situations in her life that are contributing to that we can then engage that maybe we hadn't looked at before? Yes, absolutely. But it's not about ignoring that there's something going on. It's actually looking at it, having a conversation with it, having a relationship with it. What kind of relationship with yourself are you manifesting? So manifestation basically is not pretending that obstacles don't exist, that fear doesn't exist, that there are real things that, and going, oh, they don't exist, let me just pretend they're not there. But actually being willing and able to perceive ways to overcome those obstacles. That's at the root of manifestation. It's the actions that you're taking to overcome those obstacles. Who are you manifesting? As you engage with the world, who are you manifesting? Now, one of the cautions when it comes to manifestation that I like to bring up here has to do with those ways of being that we're used to. We tend to see what we're used to seeing, which means that the ways that we perceive to overcome obstacles, those personal obstacles, the ways that we most readily perceive are typically solutions that are embedded in current societal norms and structures. They're things that we've seen other people do. So this goes back to I did it, so you can do it too. And recognizing, the thinking positive, just being able to perceive that there are things. Suddenly it's like, I perceived it, so I made it real by thinking about it. Well, actually, maybe it's you had the privilege to have access to this already and you just didn't realize it, right? There's a lot of that. So when we perceive the way forward without engaging, is this way aligned with my values? Not just for me personally, but in the impact that it has. That is a critical component when we're talking about manifesting not just individually, but also recognizing that we're part of a societal structure, that we exist not individualized by ourselves in isolation of others, but in a community. So when the first way that we perceive, or the most clear, obvious, available way is embedded in these current societal norms and structures, it often leads to us leaning on whatever privilege that societal norm affords us, again, probably without realizing it, because privilege is invisible to the people with it unless they're consciously, actively engaging it, and leaning on those to have access to that way. I'm going to give you an example that may push a few buttons, but I think it's really important to call out, and that is because I've been digging into it personally and seeing how it's playing out with some of the ways that I have engaged business. in the past, and that is that our country was founded on the idea of freedom based in exploitation. So we reward exploitation and idealize the lifestyle of those who exploit, the people who have lots of money, way more than is necessary. And we don't think of it like that. We think of it, because most of us, I would say, recognize that exploitation is harmful. And we probably try to engage in ways that aren't exploitative. But oftentimes when we are faced with trying to do something different, such as like start a business after being in corporate, if we haven't deprogrammed some of those stories, having been exploited in a corporate environment or in some other type of environment where our resources, our self has been exploited, we tend to see it in the binary that our society often pushes of, it's either this or that. So you're either exploited or the exploiter. So that way that is often presented, the known way to success and freedom, is through exploitation, without doing that work to unpack the rules of the game that created that in the first place, the ones that we've been exposed to and been victims of and engaged in. And most of us living in this society have had that in some way. Then without doing that work to unpack those rules, the search for success will inevitably be tied to tools of exploitation. So without that deprogramming, we tend to lean on these layers of social privilege that are available in order to become the exploiter rather than the exploited. And then turn around and sell freedom through exploitation as a way to help others do what we did and try and avoid any cognitive dissonance that creates by explaining that, well, I'm helping. I want money so that I can give to charities, rather than how am I engaging in a way that contributes to the need for charities for these things, instead of going, oh, well, how am I actually acting? What am I manifesting in my current actions that create these disparities and these stratifications, versus going, okay, well, I'm going to be on the top level so that I can give down. You see what I'm saying? So it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to look at because there's a lot of it in our society, and most of us are participating in some way in that dynamic because, again, it is the story that we know. Whether we like it or not, it is the prominent story. So this is why I emphasize when we're talking about manifestation, it's looking at the way you move in the world. When we talk about visioning, because visioning is really key to manifesting. There was a story recently about a father at a gym with his son who was trying to climb one of those curved walls, and his son kept almost getting there, but he wasn't quite getting there. And the father sat down and had the son close his eyes and visualize getting to the top and what it would feel like, and just all the pieces holistically of that experience of getting to the top. And then his son repeated his affirmations, and then he got to the top. And that can happen because, again, it's that being willing to put your full energy behind it, because you can really almost feel it. Like there's a sensory experience, not just in your head, but in your body, because your body is in the world. Your body is part of reality. So when we talk about shifting things, it's being able to really see the way you move in the world, the way your body is existing, the actions that you're taking, that you're playing into, and how that has impact, both for you, but also for society. It's really recognizing that, the ends justify the means thing, especially when it comes to things like success and stories that are prevalent in society that are toxic to us as a whole, as a community. The ends justify the means thing just creates more of that stratification. So it's important to consider, what are you actually manifesting, not just for you, but as part of a broader context in each moment in the actions that you're taking. Now, that may feel kind of overwhelming, right? Because that's a lot to think about. And it is. It really is, which again is why it's so important to have community that supports you. So you're not just tapping into your own brain, you're tapping into other people's brains, people who are going to support you in that process. But this is why so many people struggle in doing something new, like starting a business, and especially in starting a business, especially an online business like we're looking at, is the way that you see forward and or are sold on to manifest what you want often conflicts with your values for like value-based, service-based, person-based people who want to start businesses in that. There's a conflict with values. So either you buy in and justify the values threat of the means with the idea of, well, what you will have when you get to the end, or you stay in what is currently known, avoiding doing different things because there's the fears of, well, I don't know how this will work out. I don't see people doing this. I don't see enough people doing something differently. And then, leaning on the waiting for positive thinking to bring something into your life, or, you'll be able to see it once you think about it enough, or you blame yourself or you blame others. And this is, the most common pattern that we've all internalized is the self-blame, other blame. Since the sense of lack that most of us have been trained to experience best serves that hierarchical social economic norm. And it thus feels the safest because it's the most familiar, right? We talked about that. The things that are familiar feel the safest, and the things we tend to perpetuate because self-fulfilling prophecies and all of that. So here we go back. So when we have that sense of lack and urgency, we tend to go with what we know. Survival mode inhibits creativity. So it behooves the norms to keep us in survival mode. Breaking free of this is difficult, and it can trigger even more fear because oftentimes the way forward is different than what you've seen before. It's new, and it can feel sometimes like you're even walking backwards. That's why it's so important to stay grounded in what you're doing, who you're being, the impact that you want to have, and the smaller pieces, not just the bigger pieces in the future somewhere. And again, back to fear, remembering that those fears are there for a reason, but it's not usually the surface reason. So notice them. Ask questions. I like to treat them as like a separate thing and be like, so hi, what you doing? Where are you here from? Like, what's going on? What brought you here? And then actually have that conversation. But, you notice them, be willing to engage them, write about them, sit with them. Ask them those questions, those get to know you questions, the questions that you don't necessarily think to ask them because we've trained to just try and avoid the fear because it's bad to have it. Again, another reason why community can be so key is because it can help normalize that experience and see solutions through other people that you hadn't seen possible before. Hearing someone else walk forward, it's kind of like this give and take where ideas generate and possibilities start to seem more available. Other ways of doing things seem more accessible. One of the key parts of manifestation, even if you're not ready to maybe take an action to do a thing, but it's to talk about it. Talk to people about what you want. Again, these community components of being around people who are supportive of this journey, of this process, and who you're trying to be, being with it, talking about it in a place where you feel able to engage courageously, that there's a certain safety present for you in being able to express what you're interested in, being with it, sharing it. Talking about it is part of bringing it into the world. Sometimes when you talk about it, you never know that when you say words, someone else may go, oh, and hear those words and recognize an opportunity that wasn't available before because those connections didn't happen. So being able to talk about it is the very first piece to manifesting. Being able to imagine it, know what you want, who do you want to be, how do you want to experience life, what impact do you want to have, and then talk about it. And if you don't want to talk about it, that fear could be present. So engage the fear, explore it. Part of that issue with that pseudoscience around manifestation that's full of the toxic positivity is it seems like if I talk about it, if I talk about the fear, if I look at the fear, if I engage the fear, then I'm going to give it energy and it's going to get bigger. But it's all about how you talk to it, how you talk about it. Are you leaning into complaining about it? Or are you engaging it in a way that helps you understand it better? Fear itself isn't negative. Just want to emphasize that. I have a whole podcast episode on toxic positivity you can go listen to, but just really remembering that when it comes to manifesting as well, fear isn't negative. It may hold you back from doing the thing, but it's not that it's not because it's bad. It's because there's something for you to look at, and you can honor its presence without feeding it. Honoring it, honoring yourself and your experience of life currently and what's going on and what's coming up for you, being in the present moment and able to support yourself, courageously engaging the fear by exposing it for whatever it is, can actually help you dissipate it. And it's possible to engage it while keeping what you want at the forefront of that exploration. I want this. Fear, what are you doing here? What are you trying to tell me? What do I need to look at that I hadn't looked at before? What would support me supporting me? Because the fear is there to protect you. So what would support me supporting me to move forward? What value might be popping up in the form of fear saying, hey, there's a conflict here. You're trying to do something that doesn't align with what you believe in. And engaging that, well, is there another way? What other way might there be? Could I come up with another way? Where might I find people who are doing it another way? And how might I engage that way for me? Because that fits better for who I am and who I want to be and the impact that I want to have in the world. So that's what manifestation is. It's every action that you take, including talking about it, including engaging fear and exploring things. It's being able to focus on what you want and take steps towards that, even if sometimes they feel like they're backwards. And again, it really makes a huge difference to have a community to support you in that. So as we wrap up, I remind you that there are lots of communities out there that you can find that will support you. It is really important to know what the process is, what the personalities are, and what the purpose is in what that group is about, and how does it fit with what you want to create. And so finding those places that can support you in taking action. One of the things that I've done in my group, because of the things that I've been engaging with my own manifestation through my own business and my own work in the world, is looking at how I charge for what I offer. So one of the things that I have shifted in my business this year is to create a sliding scale. So it's a self-selected sliding scale. I have some recommended payments that you can select what fits best for you and what's going on in your life right now. It's adjustable. So if things change, then we can talk about that and engage that. And it will not impact what you receive from me. So if you have more and can pay more, that supports me supporting people who don't have as much available financially to them to pay, then that's awesome. And if you can't, I don't want this to not be accessible to you because you have a different financial circumstance currently than someone else. So that is something that I have set up both for my group program, but also for individual work. And so I invite you to take a look at it. See if this group might be a good fit for you. And then we hop on a call to actually have a conversation to see if it is, in fact, a good fit for you, for the group. And then we go from there. So check that out. Next podcast episode is going to be all about visioning. So how do you utilize the visioning component to support what you're manifesting in the world? I hope you will join me for that episode, and I will talk to you all next time. Thanks for listening. I so appreciate you being here. If you got something out of today's episode, please share it. Leave me a review, take a screenshot, and post it on social with a shout out to me. Send it to a friend or, all of the above. Want to hang out more? Join me on Instagram. Or better yet, get on my mailing list to make sure you don't miss out on anything. And remember, your possibilities are as unlimited as you are. Allow yourself to shine, my friend. The world needs your light. See you next time.